Hey, welcome back everyone. So I'm going to be taking you through 12 firearms that I purchased over the last 12 months and what prices I paid for them. I'll show you the firearms, you'll get to see a bit of their condition, and then I'll do a very quick overview of each weapon. And this is really just supposed to be informational. This is not a guide on what you should get or what I'm recommending you pay for an item. There are so many variables that determine prices in today's market. Scarcity, of course, being the biggest factor. Then there's regional variation, your personal taste, of course, and ultimately what the consumer, you, is willing to pay at the time of purchase. I'm located in the Mid-Atlantic, where prices for some items can vary compared to, let's say, the West Coast or even the Northeast, though I don't know what the market is out there, what these different regional markets are like. So this is really just me putting data out to the world as a curiosity. A lot of items that I'm going to be going through were purchased from online vendors, which mean that the prices will be pretty consistent anywhere in the United States, with slight variations, of course, in shipping costs, depending on what state you're located in. But, about half of these were acquired locally, which is, I think, where you get the most variation in price. Used firearms is one of those consumer markets where you're able to negotiate most of the time, which is, I think, an aspect that attracts a lot of people to the hobby and to, even if you're not in the mil-serp community, at least used firearms in general. Everyone remembers their first gun show and learning the loops of haggling prices and trying to get the best deal. And I think, in the mil-serp world, the chase is honestly half the fun. I'll also say that this has been a very odd year for most of us. The last 12 months, we've been in the midst of a pandemic, and this month is really when the vast majority of state restrictions have been lifted, at least in most parts of the United States. There are other places like Arizona, Florida, and Texas where restrictions were pretty much lifted months ago. But for the vast majority of the United States, this month is when a lot of those statewide restrictions have been lifted. So we're going to start to see, we might start to see prices rebound as gun shows open up again. People start moving around, visiting shops. But honestly, even during the pandemic, prices for mil-serps in general were still consistently increasing. They're really never going to decrease in aggregate price, but I think a lot of you out there in the mil-serp community kind of already know that. Again, sharing information in the community is important, and this is really all I'm doing here. I'm just putting this out there in a sea of data points, and you guys can do whatever you want with that. For someone watching this video 5 years from now who just is curious on what prices are for some of these guns, that might be an interesting data point for them. So again, this is me just kind of throwing those out there. Though feel free to comment on what you think would be considered a fair price for some of these items, or if something was way too high for what you would have been willing to pay, at least in 20 or 2021. So with that being said, let's go ahead and jump into the first rifle. Okay, the first rifle we're going to be looking at is a French Berthier Model 1907, 15 Model 1916. So this is a good example of a Model 1916 French Berthier. Of course, there were several different variations of the Berthier that served the French army during the First World War. This is a Saint-Étienne example. It's chambered in the 8mm Lebel cartridge, and I paid $6.95 for this rifle. This is just, a lot of these at least the Model 16 rifles, not a lot of these served in the First World War. A lot of these were being manufactured during the war, but a lot of them didn't make it to the front lines. But either way, it's in a really good condition. The earlier 1907 15 Berthiers only had, which were much more common in the First World War on the front lines by the French military, had the 3-round magazine. Then they upgraded. The Model 1916 had a 5-round magazine, which was fed by a end block clip that was fed on the top, and of course there's a mainspring here, and then it would, of course, the empty end block clip would come out of the bottom. It's a really beautiful rifle. Again, it's a Saint-Étienne production rifle. This also came with a bayonet, which those alone can go between $150 to $200. So that alone, I think, actually makes this price not terrible. And then, as an addition, it comes with an original leather sling. But yeah, and then the barrel is in gorgeous condition. But again, a great example of a French World War I classic rifle. And the bore is in excellent condition. So I couldn't be happier with this Berthier. The next rifle we're going to be taking a look at is the M95 Steyr Stutzen rifle. This is an Austro-Hungarian designed, used in the First World War and beyond. Originally, they were chambered in 8x56, and then after the war, they were rechambered in the 8x56 rimmed cartridge. So most of these barrels were upgraded to the new round, and of course, you can see a figure S, which denotes that it was upgraded to this newer cartridge. And a lot of them were also shortened to a carbine length, just for convenience, and it's a straight pull action, which is feels great. I love the aesthetic of these M95 Steyrs, and I paid about $320 US for this rifle. It's in great condition. I know one of the issues that a lot of new owners to the Stutzen or the M95 Steyr rifles is that the bolts are typically very sticky. The bolt on mine is surprisingly very smooth. I haven't incurred this sort of sticky feeling on the bolt. And again, the aesthetic is just fantastic. It feels really good and it shoots really straight. At some point, of course, someone sanded the barrel, which I'm not like too crazy about, but for that price on these M95s, you know, it's not something I'm too worried about. It shoots great, and I've taken it out to the range a couple times. Of course, it uses the Mannlicher style end block loading clips. It holds about 5 rounds and is an overall great rifle, so I'm happy with the purchase. Now, the third rifle on the list, which shouldn't really surprise anyone in the milsurp community, is the Moschetto Modello 1891 in 6.5 Carcano. And of course, it's got the folding bayonet on the end here. I paid about $239 for this rifle, and the reason it's so cheap is because this year and last year there's been a lot of surplus Italian rifles coming into the United States. The ammunition for these Carcanos are not particularly available at the moment, especially in 6.5 Carcano and 7.35, but the rifles themselves are actually quite affordable, and like a lot of people, I've started to scoop up a lot of these Carcano rifles. This one, you know, there's a lot of retailers in the United States that are selling these. This particular one is in fantastic condition. The stock is in great condition. There's almost no pitting on them. Every part of this rifle is functional. I've shot it several times. And it just, even things like the cartouche are still in really good condition. So I've been happy with this purchase, and like you'll see, I've got a couple other Carcanos I acquired this year. But anyway, Moschetto Modello cavalry carbine, as people call it, is pretty widely available right now in the US, and pretty much a lot of the major online retailers are selling them, and so you'll probably start to see a lot of these floating around on gun shows as people begin selling them off. But anyway, they're relatively cheap at the moment. All right, continuing our journey down the Carcano line of Italian military surplus bolt-action rifles, of course, is the Moschetto Modello per TS per Truppe Special. So, of course, you had a couple variations of the Carcano carbines. The other one was, you know, popularly dubbed as the cavalry carbine, and this is the Truppe Special. So this is used by, you know, machine gun crews, mortar crews, etc. This cost me about $250 when it's all said and done, with shipping and taxes plus the transfer fees. Again, this is coming in with that batch of military rifles that are relatively cheap in the U.S. surplus market right now. Again, has that end block Mannlicher style loading system, holds 6 rounds, comes out the bottom here. Again, a beautiful rifle, almost no pitting. A lot of these were refurbished in the 1940s. As you can see on some of the cartouches here, but it's quite pretty visible. It's, again, a nice World War I dated rifle, 1918, and there's not too many World War I rifles floating around these days that are under $300. The barrel is, again, in fantastic condition, and I love these Carcano actions. Again, 6.5 Carcano is not necessarily the cheapest cartridge to find right now, especially in the pandemic and with the flood of Italian rifles coming into the US market, but it's one of those deals you really just can't pass up. Now, this is not exactly a Italian rifle, but it is an Italian surplus pistol, the Beretta Model 1951, the predecessor to the popular Beretta 92. Of course, this is 1976 dated, 9mm parabellum with a single stacked magazine. Again, a lot of U.S. retailers were selling these over the last year. It's got the sidebar safety on it. And then it just has that nice, smooth slide, external hammer, of course, really easy to disassemble. It's got the, plastic grips. Nothing too crazy about them. They are pretty nice looking rifle, or not rifles, pistols. And this cost me about $275. And for a Beretta 9mm, that's really not that bad. I know the 92s are obviously a little bit better. And these do have, I've experienced several jamming issues with these pistols, but they are sleek. They have a really nice aesthetic to them. I like shooting this pistol. It's pretty accurate as well, and it's just the weight in and of itself makes it a pretty nice little pistol. Not something I would recommend for self-defense, but again, a surplus Italian Beretta 9mm for $275, and just something you can't pass up. But anyway, that is the Beretta 51. So continuing to go down the line of Italian military rifles, this here is the Japanese, Italian Type I Carcano rifle in 6.5 Japanese. This was a rifle manufactured for the export market in 6.5 the 6.5 Japanese cartridge. And this is 1939 dated, and so these rifles were manufactured in Italy by Italians, by several Italian companies. This particular one, I think, was Gordon Valtrampia, and was a contract ordered rifle for the Japanese Imperial Navy. And these guns are not particularly rare. This was something I purchased locally, and they're, of course, it's 6.5 Japanese. There's no sort of markings on them. There's a serial number. There's no mum. Again, I think they made about 100,000 of these. So again, you can see these from time to time at gun shows, gun shops online. They're pretty solid. They look like the predecessor to the Japanese Type 99 rifle in 6.5 Japanese. And the reason they're in such good condition is because a lot of them were in service by the Japanese Navy and were not particularly well used. So, it's not necessarily a bad thing. And I picked this up for $325, which I think was a pretty good deal. As part of a bundle deal I purchased with a couple other rifles. It didn't come with any accessories, but again, $325 for a Type I Carcano rifle for the Japanese export market. Now, the next rifle I want to show you is the Chilean Modello 1912, the Chilean Model 1912. This was a Steyr, another Steyr-made rifle. It was a long rifle, of course, made, again, for the export market. It's basically a small ring receiver Mauser with a straight bolt. It goes from 300 meters up to, I believe, 2,000 meters. It's a great rifle. These are known for their accuracy. They have, that really nice slick Mauser action, used, of course, by the Chilean government. They ordered a number of Chilean Mausers, the 1895. There's the 1912, of course, and then there's the 1935 Chilean Mauser. This one is Waffenfabrik Steyr. Great rifle. They are fantastic shooters. They're really smooth. They're very comfortable. They have really nice ingrained dark wood on them. This one, of course, comes with a sling, and I paid $325 for this Chilean 1912. There's no pitting on it. There's barely any sort of dings. There's dings and usage marks on the wood because it's over 100 years old. But the barrel is in great condition. I haven't had any problems with this. It's incredibly accurate. 7mm Mauser, of course. A lot of the Latin American and pretty much all the Chilean Mausers were in 7mm Mauser. Ballistically, it's a fantastic cartridge, but I mean, it is a gorgeous, gorgeous rifle. And so, you know, it's not something that too many people can pass up on. It has the nice cartouche outlined in it. So it's all matching, of course. So again, $325 for a Chilean 1912 long rifle. Okay, so the next rifle we have is another World War I classic. These are getting a little bit harder to find, but the Fucile Modello 1891, or simply the original 1891 Carcano rifle. This is the predecessor to all, I mean, this is the first Carcano rifle. This is the predecessor to all the Carcano rifles. This particular one is 1918 dated. Again, another World War I classic, straight bolt action, straight bolt. You have the N-block 5-round Carcano magazine with the 6-round N-block clip that shoots 6.5 Carcano, used by the Italian Armed Forces in the First World War. It's got the massive mammoth rear sights, which are just, you know, you can fold forward, and just, you know, aesthetically just a beautiful, beautiful rifle. You know, these are not super available anymore. These are definitely getting harder and harder to find. But again, anyone who wants a World War I collection, this is a must. And I paid $560 for this rifle. And it also came with the M91 bayonet, which in and of themselves can cost anywhere between $100 and $150, depending on the condition. It also came with the sheath. I know that, of course, when we're talking about the cost and value of firearms, accessories are not something that we necessarily always talk about. But when you are talking about bayonets, bayonets can almost be as expensive as the rifles themselves. In some cases with these Carcanos, there are bayonets that cost more than rifles, especially in the military surplus market. So anyway, this is a Tierney production, all matching serial numbers, just a beautiful example of a World War I Italian Carcano. Has a dark bore, but it is very nice. There's no complaints here. Again, this is a local pickup, but you know, these Carcanos, the original M91s at least, are not as available as they used to be. So I'm glad I was able to get one this year. Again, this was $560. Okay, this rifle seemed appropriate to go next, considering we just went over the Fucile Modello 1891, but this was kind of the successor to the 91 in the post-war era. So as you can tell, this looks a lot like the long rifle we just looked at, the 91. It's got the same rear sights. Pretty much this was a Italian long rifle, the M91 long rifle, and at some point after the war, the designation is M91 24s, because in 1924 they started taking these long rifles and cutting them down into a carbine length. So they don't have the carbine, of course, rear sights, but they cut them down significantly, put a barrel band there, and of course they went from a straight bolt to a bent bolt. But in terms of design, it's pretty much the same. You've got a 6-round N-block clip that's fed through the magazine here. It's a Mannlicher style magazine, and then of course this is 1918 dated on the barrel. Kind of neat little rifles. I haven't shot this one to see you know, how accurate it is. But if you're an Italian arms collector, or at least a Carcano arms collector, this is something you kind of have to have in your collection. And I paid $350 for this, which I know is above market price for these, because not too long ago these were on the U.S. surplus market for like $250. I got this as part of a bundle purchase, and this one was marked at $350. Now, it did come with 6 N-block clips, which is kind of nice too. And of course, the weird thing is they're fitted with the original barrel band or the original sling for the undersling for the long rifle, but the new bands were put on for side slings because they are now the carbine length. But anyway, kind of a nice evolution of these M91s that were cut down and turned into carbine length rifles. But again, in 6.5 Carcano, and I bought this for $350. Okay guys, we're seeing a lot of Carcanos here. Obviously this year was a theme where I am trying to build my Carcano collection because these old Italian bolt action rifles are really neat. They've got a lot of history to them. But after the Model 1924s were manufactured, the Italian Army designated a new type of carbine, the Model Moschetto Modello 9128s. Now that's not the actual correct designation for these rifles, but essentially it's the same rifle you just saw. They cut, except these weren't cut down. These were actually made short. So you can see that the rear sights, the rear foldable sights right here, are actually cut down for, or, well, they're shortened obviously for carbine length. So you don't have this awkwardly long rear sights. Of course, it's got the bent down bolt. They were actually made to, well, they weren't cut down. And I think there's a lot of talk that people discuss about the actual twist within the barrel rate. So when we look at the cut down 24s, they cut the barrel off, but the twist rate was still pretty high, or it was a little bit longer in the back areas of where the rifling was. So once the bullet actually went out of the barrel where it was cut down on, there may be some compromises on accuracy. So with these 28s, they actually made a twist rate that was all the way through to the end of the barrel. So these carbines are said to be more accurate. I haven't shot this one before. But anyway, yeah, so these are the 28s. These are fairly available in the US market right now. I paid $350 for this particular rifle. It also came with a 91 bayonet, which was also kind of nice. But again, if you're going to be collecting Carcano rifles in 2020 and 2021, you kind of have to get all these in-between models. And I gotta say, this is a pretty nice example of a Model 28, 9128, officially called the Moschetto per Truppe Speciali Modello 1891 Modificato. Okay guys, so the second to last rifle I'm going to be showing you is the Carcano Model 38 and 7.35 Carcano. This was in around 1938. The Italian military was trying to create a universal rifle for their armed forces, something between a long rifle and a carbine length rifle that could be used interchangeably by basically everyone in the Italian armed forces. And so they switched over to this 7.3 Carcano cartridge when pretty much all Italian military rifles before then were chambered in the 6.5 Carcano cartridge. And that was the idea there, was to pretty much standardize everything. And what happened was in 1940, they got involved in World War II. Obviously, most of you guys are going to know that. And what they found out was 2 years into the production of this rifle in 7.35, they were like, oh shoot, we don't really have the supply logistics to to manufacture 7.35. And so what they did was they reverted back to the 6.5 Carcano cartridge. So really these rifles, the Carcano rifles that were in 7.35 really only lasted for 2 years in military service. And then they reverted back to the 6.35. And a lot of these rifles were, this one is Arisaka manufactured in 1939, 7.35. And then of course, you can see this barely here, but it says SA. So this was actually given to Finland as war aid during World War II. Finland, of course, was part of the Axis powers for most of the war. And they fought on the side of Germany and Italy. And so Italy was like, well, now that we're reverting back to the 6.5, we're just going to give all these 7.35 chambered rifles as military aid to other countries. The Italian military, of course, had been using these rifles for, well, at least the Italian Carcano rifles that were in 6.5 for 2 decades, 2 to 3 decades, really really 5 decades if you count 1891. And so they had tons and tons and tons and tons of those rifles stored up, and they were all in 6.5. And to switch over all your machinery and all your supply logistics and disrupt all those supply chains over the course of 2 years, well, that's a lot of strain on your system. So instead of trying to design like a whole new system that quickly, they just decided to go back to their old 6.5 Carcano cartridge. So anyway, and the other thing with the M38 that you guys will probably recognize is that this was the rifle used to, well, it was the rifle used by Lee Harvey Oswald to assassinate John F. Kennedy. Now, the one that Lee Harvey Oswald used was in the 6.5 Carcano cartridge, just because, you know, in the war they had, the Italian army had switched mid-manufacture of the 38 Carcano rifles back to the 6.5 Carcano cartridge like we were talking about. This particular one is one of those that are in 7.35 Carcano, so not exactly the same model that was used to assassinate JFK. But anyway, it is part of the Italian military heritage, and I paid $290 for this rifle. And then there's a little folding bayonet that would slide in here and just come down, as you can see here. It looks like somebody at some point took the stock and made it all pretty and new again. It's not laminated, but it is. It was sanded at some point and then I guess sort of refurbished, so it doesn't have that old aged look to it, which I actually kind of like that old aged look to it. But anyway, $290 for a Model 38 Carcano is not bad in my opinion. So there you have it. All right, we're going to finish off this video with one of my favorite rifles that I've shot numerous times since I purchased it a couple months ago. This, of course, is the Model 1917, chambered in 30-06, was the main infantry rifle used by the United States military in the First World War. This particular rifle, even though it's about 1918 dated, it is World War II refurbished. It's got a 1918 dated barrel. This is a Remington manufactured rifle. There was a couple different companies that manufactured the Model 1917s during the war. Winchester, Rock Island, Arsenal was another one. But these rifles are fantastic. They're incredibly accurate. They're incredibly smooth. They're gorgeous rifles. These were used, like I said, this is what Alvin York used in the First World War. This actually saw more use by the United States military than the 1903 did in the First World War. And it is a gorgeous rifle. I mean, this particular one is in absolute mint condition. The barrel is spotless. There's no pitting that exists on this rifle at all. There are a few dings on the wood, but for the most part, it's incredibly clean. I don't think this rifle has seen a lot of use. This is a reproduction sling that I put on it. And so I've shot this rifle a number of times. It is incredibly accurate. And I paid $1,000 for this rifle. And, you know, I think these rifles retail from, depending on condition, from $800 to $1,500. This was sold as a rifle that was in absolute mint condition. There is not a spot on the metal of this rifle that is in bad condition. The bore is spotless. There's, like I said, very little dings on the wood itself. Just a fantastic rifle and a great piece of U.S. military history. But again, I paid $1,000 for it locally. It was marked at $1,100, negotiated the price down a little bit. But anyway, the Model 1917, a classic piece of Americana history, especially if you're into World War I rifles. So this year was really an opportunity to build up my World War I collection and to build up my Italian Carcano collection. So anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and let me know what you think about the rifles I picked up, the prices I paid for them, and the overall condition, and we'll see you later.